A lot to come over the next hour. Stay tuned.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on three. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
Welcome back, everybody, to another show. We had a fun one today. Me and my guy Suneil. Suneil, how you doing, my man?
Man, I'm doing. Whoa, I don't know what was going on with my voice right there, but I am doing fantastic, my boy Rohan. Before we get started, props to you for your promotion over there in Wisconsin. So just wanted to give you some props on air about that. I'm super excited, man. Playoff football is finally on us, and familiar foe. So a lot to look
Yeah.
forward to.
No, definitely. It's going to be a fun one for sure because we've got playoff football again. And, the 49ers obviously right in the brunt of it. The number 2 seed facing off against the number 7 seed, the Seattle Seahawks. And it'll be an interesting matchup. It's obviously the first game of Wild Card Weekend for reasons being that the 49ers are 10-point favorites over the Seahawks at the moment. And it's going to be a rainy game as well. So a lot of different factors going into this one. It's going to be a fun Saturday morning game. What's kind of your initial thoughts on the Seahawks being the opponent and also the game itself?
So the game itself, so just going in initially, just thinking about the game just from the jump without any new information that's coming about the weather and whatnot, I felt like this was a game where the 49ers were either going to completely dominate and it was going to be a blowout, 20, 30-point blowout, or it was going to be a really close, grimy game. And the reason for that is the Seahawks are playing with house money, right? Nobody necessarily expected them to make it to the playoffs. They've already lost twice to this team. They're 10-point underdogs, which is pretty insane when you talk about a playoff matchup. And so I just felt like Pete Carroll and the Seahawks are going to just play extremely aggressive because they had nothing really to lose. They were going to just abandon any kind of quote unquote conservative type play and just throw anything against the wall and see what sticks. The one thing that the Seahawks have an opportunity to take advantage of is they do have a deep ball threat in Tyler Lockett, and they have a quarterback in Geno who can throw the deep ball relatively well. We know that that's the 49ers' biggest weakness when it comes to the defensive side. So I expected them to just try to launch the ball, go deep as often as possible, and see if they could catch the 49ers with, those big plays. With the weather, though, now, Rohan, coming in, I think that actually benefits the 49ers because it takes away that opportunity necessarily for the deep ball to be something that you could depend on, because if it's as torrential downpour as it looks like it's going to be, and with the any type of rain, it makes the field obviously more soggy, which slows people down. The ball becomes more slippery, which makes it harder to throw the ball deep. So I think now it's probably going to be closer to short passes and run game, which I think the 49ers are going to be even more favored in that type of game, just because they have obviously the better defense, and I would say the better short game and running game by far.
I think so too, overall. I mean, there's a reason that the 49ers are 10-point favorites, and I've been thinking about who does the weather impact more in terms of positive or negative. And I think it's interesting because the 49ers have been getting beaten through the air. Now, the air game, really the deep passing game, does get affected the most when it comes to when it comes to weather and the rainy conditions. Now, we don't know how the conditions will be throughout the majority of the game, but I think it does favor the 49ers in that way because the Seahawks will likely look to air it out more, especially if they're behind, whereas the 49ers play a little more balanced and don't necessarily dial up as many deep shots. Instead, it can be intermediate shots. Some shot plays will certainly be there, but we'll see how that kind of factors in. Now, on the initial thoughts, I do agree that the 49ers are favored. I think Seattle has a strong running game because of Kenneth Walker, their running back, but I think the 49ers defend the run well. We've seen them really falter only once or so with the running game, and for the most part, they've been a strong running team as well, one of the top rushing attacks in the NFL, even with the way their passing game has worked this year. So I think they're looking good on both sides of the ball, but this is also a playoff game, so we got to keep that in mind. Uh-oh. We can't hear you.
Probably because I put it on mute. My bad. Little rookie move. But the Seahawks have already, to go 3-0 against the team in the playoffs or in a season, it's pretty tough. We saw that last year with the Rams, right? The 49ers had swept the Rams in the regular season and couldn't get it done in the playoff game. So, this isn't a game that I think the 49ers should overlook. I don't think that they are overlooking it. I think the fan base also should, be wary of just knowing that this isn't going to be just an easy out if the 49ers play with their food. I think that if they get these guys out of there in the first and second quarter and just go up by 17 points, 21 points by halftime or whatnot, that's what I'd ideally like to see. Because as far as just matchup wise, the 49ers talent and how they've been playing over the past, 10 weeks, there should be far better than the Seahawks. So I just hope that they get focused, start strong, start quick, and give these guys a knockout punch in the first half so that they could take it easy the second half of the game.
Yeah, I think so too. And that kind of leads me to our next topic with the 49ers and the Seahawks, in that who do you think right now, like, not who necessarily, but what do you think should the 49ers be worried about with the Seahawks? We talked about how they could be favored, the reasons why they might be favored. What do you think they should be worried about in this matchup?
I mean, I think it's for sure. I think they're a 10-point favorite right now based off of Vegas. So 49ers are definitely favored. But the thing is, like they were favored against the Bears when it was similar to this type of weather that could be there. So I think the 49ers should be worried if this game is close late. Because at the end of the day, that's when anything can happen. That's why I think it's extremely important for the 49ers to start strong and start quick. The weather is going to be difficult. I don't know. I think this is probably the first this type of weather game for Brock Purdy. I don't know if over his last 5 starts if he had to deal with any type of weather situation, but that is going to play a role. Can the ball security be there? Rainy weather, if they throw it, that could lead to turnovers. So I think that the 49ers should just be worried if this game turns into a game where they're making mistakes, right? So as long as they stay focused, they hold on to ball security. Like I said, I know Kenneth Walker has been coming on, in the later stages of the game after he's getting healthier and healthier, but I still don't, they've still struggled even with him running the ball well, right? It's not like they're blowing out teams or anything like that. I think Seattle is a team that nobody expected to be here. I think in all of our early predictions, Rohan, when we were talking about the NFC West, all of us, I don't know if anybody didn't have Seattle as the 4th team in the division, probably looking for a top 5 draft pick. And instead, they're not only were they not the 4th team in the division, they actually are the wild card team and, made it into the playoffs. So, kudos to Pete Carroll, kudos to Geno Smith, who I think, earned himself another starting job, whether it be with Seattle or some other team. But they're a team that's playing with house money, which makes them dangerous, right? They're still an NFL football team. They're rivals. DK, even though he's been shut down by Charvarius Ward, in both games that he played against Ward, he's been hearing all of that chirping. Seahawks can't be happy about the way that the 49ers have dominated them this season. So anything could happen. The weather, once again, makes it even more of a toss-up as far as the predictability of things. So I think the 49ers just have to be extremely mentally focused. And look, there's a lot of talk about, the people not showing up to the game as far as fans and things of that nature. So who knows what the atmosphere is going to be like there as well. So
That's true.
just need to get it done early, quickly, stay focused. And, I don't want this game to be that much drama. Let's put it that way.
That is true. That is true. And I mean, you talk about the potential worries. It looks like the 49ers on paper are better than the Seahawks in legitimately every category, right? It seems like it in terms of skill position players. The 49ers have a plethora of them. In terms of offensive line, the 49ers are better defensive line. The 49ers are better linebackers. Cornerbacks, you could make the argument, but I think they're either even or a little more well-rounded with Trevarius Ward. Safeties, it seems like the 49ers are better as well. Overall, it seems the 49ers are the better team. But you just highlighted one matchup that I am very curious on your thoughts. Trevarius Ward versus DK Metcalf. It's been a matchup that's been highlighted both of the past two games. Earlier this week, Ward was asked on his thoughts about DK Metcalf. Essentially said, DK ain't my guy. He ain't my friend. We're competitors and we're going to battle it out on the field. And so this is going to be it's going to be a fun matchup. Do you think the 49ers should let Ward shadow DK Metcalf or play play Ward on one side of the field, Lenore on the other side of the field, similar to how they did against the Las Vegas Raiders?
I mean, I would stick with the same game plan, whatever they did in the first two matchups with Seattle. I don't recall if they shadowed in that game or if they just kept to a side. But if it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't think they should get too cute. Whatever way they ended up playing in the two matchups that they had against the Seahawks this year, clearly neither of those games were very competitive. So I would say whatever the defense did in those games, do the same exact thing. You're on mute.
There we go. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should probably have the shadow happen again. Travarius Ward has been a strong. He's been a good competitor for the 49ers against DK Metcalf. He's a guy who matches the physicality that DK Metcalf brings to the field, and I think that that's an important thing for the 49ers as well. Having that physicality matchup, because Ward will allow catches. Metcalf will also be he'll do his thing, and I think you need to minimize the amount of explosive plays given up. I think the best way to do that is having Ward on Metcalf, because Tyler Lockett will likely operate well out of the slot.
I agree.
But continuing forward with this matchup, Travarius Ward, DK Metcalf obviously being a factor, but the other part on the other side of the ball, Brock Purdy, it's going to be his first game as an NFL quarterback against the playoffs. How are you feeling about him kind of going into this matchup, knowing that it's not necessarily the best situation for a rookie quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the lights get brighter. Now it's one and done in all of these games, so there is an added element of pressure. The weather, again, is something to be worried about. However, I'm not too worried about Brock Purdy, to be honest, Rohan. And the reason why I'm not worried about Brock Purdy is Brock Purdy isn't being anything other than Brock Purdy. In the last 5 games we've seen him start, he hasn't been doing anything that's outside of the realm of what he's capable of doing. He's not doing anything outside of the realm of what he's being asked to do by Kyle Shanahan. And it doesn't seem like he has that want to be this like gunslinger or just like put the team on his shoulder and just try to win the game himself. He's very content with being the quote unquote game manager, right? As far as he understands his role is to get the ball into the talent of, into his talent's hands. And obviously everybody knows that the type of talent he has around him is not only elite, but we're talking about top echelon of the top echelon, right? He's throwing
Right.
to multiple all pros on every single level, right? So I think because we've seen that, the way that he handles himself with the media, the way that the team responds to him, and the way that he responds to the team, he seems like a humble guy. He seems like he's, understands his role on the team. And more than anything, he's never seemed like a deer with the headlights. He's never had that look on his face. He's thrown interceptions, been able to come back and put together good drives. And look, this guy doesn't know what it tastes like to lose in the NFL. So I don't think that he expects anything less than that. And I trust Shanahan is going to put him in good situations. And like I said, not only is he able to hand the ball off to CMC, but when CMC is tired, he's handing the ball off to Elijah Mitchell. So now the 49ers have two really good options at running back that I think is going to bode well in a game like this where ball security, time of possession is going to play a big role with the weather.
And overall, Purdy, his goal is simple. Don't turn the football over in this game. That's really it. When you talk about turnover differential, the 49ers are the best team in turnover differential this year. A huge change from their turnover differential from a year ago when they really didn't generate turnovers at a high level. They were 26th in interceptions, 19th in takeaways last year. And so that turnover differential was really in the middle of the pack. This year, it's number one. Why? They protect the football at a very high rate while also generating the amount of turnovers. That's why they are 12-4, because 10 of those 12 games have been of, what do you call it? 10 of those 12 games have been when the 49ers have won the turnover battle. Last year, they only won the turnover battle in 5 games, hence the record that they ended with, and they lost the games. I think they went 1-5 in the games that they had a negative turnover battle. The number one thing, turnover battle, that starts with Brock Purdy at quarterback. He needs to essentially protect the football and let the game plan just come to him and execute that to a pristine level.
I love it. Breaking news
Let's
in
do
the
it.
NFC West. According to Ian Rappaport, Rams coach Sean McVay intends to return as the team's coach
Yeah.
after taking a few days to consider his future. So that's per Ian Rappaport and Mike Garofalo. So initial thoughts on hearing that McVay is going to come back?
Yeah, I saw this a little earlier, and to me, I don't think it changed too much. I know it was 50-50, but to me, I mean, McVay's a good coach. It provides stability to a program that probably needs it in the Los Angeles Rams after the injury-riddled year they had. I think McVay's a good coach. I wonder now, the number one thing that I wonder, does Raheem Morris go elsewhere? Because Raheem Morris likely was going to be, he's the Rams defensive coordinator. He was likely going to get the head coaching position, or he was at least the top internal option. I think he would have been an interesting guy for a head coaching position. He's had it before in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and also had a brief stint with the Atlanta Falcons as an interim head coach when Dan Quinn was fired. So he has head coaching experience, and he's been interviewed by 3 teams already for a head coaching position, while also being given a defensive coordinator position by the Atlanta Falcons. So I wonder what happens there. That's kind of my main thoughts. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that it shows that they'll probably keep this team intact for at least one more year, right? Because
Yeah,
that he probably got assurances that Stafford's going to be healthy next season to come back. Ramsey is going to stay. Maybe Aaron Donald comes back for another year. Just kind of like that last year. Let's put it together one last year. And if Stafford's there with the talent and the coaching and all that kind of stuff, I would say that the year that the Rams had this year is more of an exception to the rule rather than what they're going to be from this point on. I think that next year with better quarterback play, and I think that they could definitely be another team that competes. I don't think they'll be as bad as they were this year next year. So even more pressure on the 49ers to do something this year, and go out there and take advantage of being the number 2 seed and being,
right.
what it seems to be at least, probably, if not, set like the favorite, at least one of the top 2, probably favored to come out of the NFC. So with the Eagles, I would say. So yeah, next year it's already seeming like it's going to be tougher in the NFC West. The Seahawks are going to have 2 first-round picks and a high pick. So who knows who they're going to bring in, but they're obviously going to be a year better than they were last season. Arizona obviously looks like a dumpster fire right now, but they're going to get a new coach. They're going to get some picks probably from trading D-Hop and whatnot. So they might not be as big of a threat, but Seattle probably will be a threat. Rams will probably be a threat. So the NFC West will probably be much tougher road. More than likely, the 49ers won't expect to go 6-0 like they did this season.
Yeah, I do agree in that the 49ers don't know if they'll go 6-0 because every team should improve in a way. Maybe not the Arizona Cardinals, but every team should improve. I think McVay. I like the comment that you said about McVay kind of symbolizing the Rams kind of keeping it together likely for another year. I saw an interesting tweet from Jalen Ramsey earlier today, kind of saying if this is my final like stint, I'll be good in terms of like kind of hinting at a potential breakup with the Rams. But now I don't know if that's going to happen. And I think that the 49ers now, the NFC West is going to improve a little bit. Now, the Seahawks are there. We don't know I don't know necessarily if the Seahawks will face regression or even progress from this year because remember, their team is very young. That's a part of their team. It's a young kind of group of guys, but also you've got Geno Smith. So stability at the quarterback position will likely indicate the performance next year. But it'll be a fun battle to see how the NFC West goes along because part of the reason the 49ers are 12-4 is because they went 6-0 in the conference and dominated the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, and I
so,
mean,
yeah,
look,
go
the
ahead.
the Seahawks, depending on where they go with that top pick, because I think they have a top 5 pick, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
because they traded to Denver or whatnot, so they have a top 5 pick there. If they want to get stronger on the offensive line, or they want to get an elite rusher, or if they end up going quarterback, like any of those roles can be. Maybe not the quarterback position, but if they get a one of the top edge rushers or defensive lineman or a top offensive lineman, both of those positions have shown to be immediate upgrades in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take for granted the Seahawks getting better, the Rams, getting better, and and let's be honest, I think the 49ers will get better as well. So,
Mhm.
but more pressure, I would say, on this playoff run where right now they are, as dominant as any team I would say in the league.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think so as well. And speaking about the playoff run, I want to ask you now, knowing that the season is over, what team would have scared you the most of the three that the 49ers could have faced? The Seahawks, the Packers, or the Lions for the 7th seed? Are you happy with the matchup? And understanding it is a playoff matchup, you're not necessarily taking any team for granted, but what matchup would you have preferred of those three?
Honestly, the Seahawks are the one that I was most worried about. And the reason for it is none of those teams on paper are really a team that I'm worried about. But the one thing is, it's very tough to beat a team 3 times in one season. So that's something that the 49ers are going to have to do to progress in this league. I don't think the Packers were well-rounded enough to beat the 49ers. Obviously, they have the best quarterback out of those 3 teams. But we've also seen Kyle Shanahan, D'Amico Ryans, and anybody in the 49ers defensive coordinator position has been able to stifle Green Bay, especially in the playoffs. And it being a home game, I would think that wouldn't be as dangerous. Lions obviously have really good offense, but that defense is extremely porous, which I think the 49ers would be able to take advantage of. And the Seahawks as well, on paper, aren't a team that should be that much of a threat to the 49ers. However, out of those 3 teams, they're the most familiar with this team. Out of those 3 teams, they're obviously most passionate rivalry.
Mhm.
And they do have a coach in Pete Carroll who's won a Super Bowl, who has been able to have a lot of success against Kyle Shanahan. Obviously not this year, but in previous years. So to me, the Seahawks are actually the team that out of those 3 I would be the most worried about. And so, they ended up getting it. So we'll see.
That's interesting. I actually will disagree a little bit, but it seems like 49ers throwback, our good friend,
Fernando.
agrees with you.
Yeah.
And before I give my point, I do want to give a shout out to the guys that did come into the chat already. Mariah, 49er Faithful Lee, thank you for tuning in. Fernando, we just talked about, thank you for tuning in. Rocky Mountain Razorback, thank you for tuning in. as well as Harold Murillo. All four of you
Harold.
guys, thank you so much for tuning in. But on the topic about the Packers, Lions, or Seahawks, I think I would have definitely been more scared of the Packers. The reason being, Packers coming into that final game, we're on a 4 game winning streak. Had they won that game, it would have been a 5 game winning streak, and really we would have seen all three facets of their team in the run game, offense and defense, kind of clicking in general with a quarterback that had been playing much better than he did in the first half of the year, and so that's why I think the Packers would have been a bit of a better struggle because they had been on a roll, whereas the Seahawks, in my opinion, have regressed significantly over the last 5, 6 weeks. After starting the year 7-3 or 7-4, whatever their record was, they regressed heavily, and I thought that that would be a big reason why this matchup wouldn't be as heavily. This matchup would be more favored for the 49ers than the Packers. The Lions are a similar team to the Seahawks in terms of a strong offense and a weak defense. Of those two teams, I think it's a toss up because both teams have strong offenses and both teams have weak defenses. But overall, I don't know which one of those two I'd pick, but I think I would have been most afraid of the Packers. But regardless, I don't think that afraid is the right term. I think of the three, I think the Packers would have been the toughest matchup, but I still
Mhm.
think the 49ers would have been heavily favored in all three of these matchups.
I agree. Disagree with the Packers. Agree with the overall sentiment.
Yeah, definitely. 49ers Throwback says he believes the Rams and Cards will regress. Seahawks won't. Do you think the Rams will regress next year?
I mean, you would. I don't think so because if the quarterback comes back, then Matt Stafford comes back, then
Mhm.
ultimately they're going to get better, right? So just you throw in a Super Bowl winning quarterback, ultimately you would think that the team gets better. I don't. I They're also a team that has a lot of young people. Cam Akers was able to stay healthy at the tail end of the season, so he probably will be there, all next season. Um, I look. Here's the thing: if this is like if Sean McVay went to ownership and said, "Look, this is my last year,
Mhm.
and let's go all in and do it one more time." We've already seen the Rams are willing and able to mortgage their future to be able to go all in on a run. So if they know this is the last year of McVay, maybe they go in, they try to get another piece or two that can make this team even more talented, and and know that, hey, we're gonna make one last run at a Super Bowl, and we're gonna just suck for the next 4 or 5 years or whatever the case may be. I mean, is that far fetched? Maybe, but it's also possible. So no, I don't. I think that the Rams were pretty bad this season, and that was with quarterbacks that we didn't know their names, and then Baker came in the last few games of the season. I do think that they're going to get better. I do think that Stafford is going to bring an element to that team where they believe that they could beat any team, and I think that McVay coming back means that Aaron Donald comes back, Jalen Ramsey sticks around, and they'll see what they could do one last run.
Yeah, I think so. The reason I say the Rams won't regress, like you, they have their key pieces. And remember, the reason not the reason, but one of the reasons the Rams struggled heavily this year, well, their team was injured. I expected severe regression from the year before, given the pieces they lost. And I didn't think that the pieces they gained really outweighed the pieces they lost. But I don't think the regression is going to be that high this year, if any at all, because I think the Rams are going to get more or less injuries on the offensive line, which was their key issue. Matt Stafford also injured for a good portion of the year. Cooper Kupp injured for a good portion of the year. I don't know if they can regress further than they did this year with. I forget what their overall record was. I think it was 5-12. I don't think they'll regress further than that. The Cardinals, we'll see. I think the Cardinals are a team right now that is in limbo, but I think they'll remain the same. I don't know. I think they do regress or remain the same. Depends on how you see it. Not D'Amico. DeAndre Hopkins will likely get traded, it seems, and it seems like the Cardinals might push towards a bit of a rebuild and then focus on the back end of Kyler Murray's contract. So we'll see there. But anyway, moving forward, Real quick, I do want to give a shout out to John V and CJ Gray. Thank you both for tuning in here. But moving forward, we got some interesting news and some around the Cardinals because defensive coordinator D'Amico Ryans got a job offer, and it was actually with the Arizona Cardinals earlier today. Ryans had, or not a job offer, but an interview request. Ryans has also been requested by the Carolina Panthers, who have now come in, or who have reportedly come and said that they will not interview him actually because of logistic concerns. But he has earned requests from the Denver Broncos, earned requests now from the Arizona Cardinals, and the Carolina Panthers was another team. And there's one more team that I'm forgetting
Houston
off the
did,
top of
but
my
he
head.
declined.
Houston.
Mhm.
So he's got 4 interview requests this cycle. What are your kind of thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, we expected this to happen. It's kind of funny because earlier this season, Rohan, there was an article saying that he wasn't going to be in high demand. I don't know who wrote that article or if that was just a spoof that kind of got us or whatever the case may be, but clearly that article was wrong. D'Amico, is already highly sought out from these teams that are looking for coaching positions. And what does it point to? It points to that this is going to be the last year that D'Amico Ryans is probably the 49ers defensive coordinator. So, obviously he has performed extremely well in the 2 seasons that he has been with as a DC with the 49ers. And, now it's up to him to show this through this playoff run, more success as far as being able to finish it off with this team.
I think this one's going to be very interesting. I wrote this week that there is a realistic chance that D'Amico Ryans stays with the 49ers. And everyone right now, I think, is anticipating that D'Amico Ryans is going to be a head coach in 2023. And I think D'Amico Ryans is deserving of a head coach. I think the NFL believes that too, hence why he got 4 interviews in this cycle. D'Amico Ryans is a guy who teams respect, teams they like him as a person, which is important for the head coach, and he's a true leader. But the reason why I think it seems not unlikely, but realistic that Ryans could remain with the 49ers, well, the offers that he's gotten, the Denver Broncos, it seems like their favorite is Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was a favorite for the job last year, and it seems like he's a favorite for the job this year. While Jim Harbaugh, that tail has been there, I think it's slowly simmering as well. I don't know if D'Amico Ryans ends up getting that job. And also, I wonder how D'Amico Ryans and Hero Evero, I wonder how that looks when Hero Evero is going to be a solid head coaching candidate very soon, if not this year. And D'Amico Ryans essentially replaces Nathaniel Hackett over Evero. And so to me, I don't know if he goes to Denver. As for the other options, Houston, like we said, it seems like he's not going to interview with Houston. It seems like he declined that offer. Indy is the one team that hasn't offered Ryans a head coaching interview. They've been with a mix of offensive and defensive coordinators, and Jim Irsay has a huge say normally in this decision. So I don't know if Ryans ends up with. There's at least no evidence right now that Ryans would end up with Indianapolis, and they've also requested a solid amount of people. Evero being one of them, Raheem Morris of the Rams being another, as well as Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen, Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, and Jeff Saturday as well, their interim head coach for the year. I think the final 2 jobs were Arizona and Carolina. Arizona, he could be. It seems like they have interest. They are offering him a candidate. They're offering him an interview, although that interview might be taking place later, given that they still are searching for a GM. They're still looking there, but D'Amico Ryans, he could be in the mix there, but it seems like Sean Payton might be gaining steam as well as interim head coach Van Joseph if the Cardinals are looking to save money because they can pay him less and promote him to head coach. So that could be an option. And the last job, the Panthers, I have a sense they're going a little more offensive centric. Seems like they're not going to interview Ryans, and every other they've had two options that haven't been, which are Jim Caldwell. Oh, Caldwell is offensive, but the only guy that really isn't an offensive coach is Steve Wilkes. He's a defensive guy, and he was their interim. Every other candidate has been offensive. So I think it's a realistic chance that Ryans remains with 49ers in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, it does make a lot of sense why you would think that way. And obviously, that would be ideal for the 49ers. I just know that, early fate, like, what's the point of the coaching interview process if you're going to make your decisions even before any interviews happen? I think that, especially if the 49ers defense performs extremely well in the playoffs, D'Amico having, back-to-back years of a top tier defense and showing that he could take actually make the defense better in year two than his year one. I think that's hard for any team to really want to turn down, and not to mention, optics also plays a big role. There's a few things that I think D'Amico has going for him. One, the tree that he comes from. You already saw two coaches that came from Shanahan's tree immediately have success in the league, with Saleh and Mike going out there and Saleh turning a team that couldn't even sniff the playoffs to being a team that's a quarterback away from probably being a really dominant team in the AFC. And then Mike McDaniel taking his team to the playoffs in the first year that he was there. So I think that bodes well for D'Amico coming from that same tree. And then also, D'Amico Ryans is an ex-player and an African-American male. Both of those are things that I think the league and teams are looking to promote more in the league. And D'Amico fits all of that. He's black. He's a former coach, former defensive rookie of the year, Mike linebacker. And on top of that, he has the credentials with what he's been able to do with the 49ers defense. I just think he's too strong of a candidate for a team not to take him on. I think he'd be amazing for any organization that takes him. I would agree with you that maybe D'Amico decides to come back because we saw him do that last year with the Minnesota role. I think he's not as desperate to be a head coach. He's more looking for where it's going to be the best decision for him and his family. And maybe those situations don't make sense for him in that way. But as far as teams not wanting him, I would find that hard to believe.
I agree. I don't think it's that teams don't want him as the reason why. I think it's more of a factor of him, his situation, but also more of a factor of that offensive coordinators seem like the hot, like the I don't know what the term is, but they're the hottest on the market right now. It
Yeah.
seems like every team wants
In
offensive
style.
guys. They're the style. Every team
Yeah.
wants offensive guys to match their quarterback, the guy that they draft, because teams that normally need new head coaches, well, they normally have young or need new quarterbacks. That's kind of a thing. And so
Yeah, and I
I
mean,
think,
you mentioned it, right? You look at some of the teams. Mike McDaniel, offensive mind, took his team to the playoffs after not making the playoffs last year. Brian Daboll, the Giants hadn't made the playoffs in 6 years. He comes in first year, he makes it to the playoffs.
yeah,
Jacksonville Jaguars, Doug Peterson, offensive-minded coach, a team that was irrelevant, not relevant last season, all of a sudden makes the playoffs, wins their division in 1 year. So you make a lot of sense, Rohan, with that take because you are seeing these offensive-minded coaches come in and make some big turnarounds. So we shall see. I just think that there's a lot going for D'Amico, and I do believe that there's a team that will take a chance on him. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be up to him whether he feels like it's the best decision for him and his family.
I agree. And now let's shift to the second portion of the 49ers and interviews. Adam Peters. Adam Peters had 2 interviews scheduled. Could have been more. He had, I think, interviews with was it the Arizona Cardinals and the Tennessee Titans? I forget. I
Correct.
think it was the Arizona
They
Cardinals and
both
the Tennessee
requested at
Titans.
least.
Both requested. Peters, via Ian Rappaport, declined both interviews and is remaining with the San Francisco 49ers. What do you take away from this?
One, so outside of Kyle Shanahan, the one person on this 49ers staff that's not a player that I wouldn't want to lose is Adam Peters. I have so much respect for him and his drafting abilities. And obviously, we don't know for sure who's making those decisions in the draft room. But it is looking like these later round picks seem to be Adam Peters guys. And we just saw another one in Hufanga go out there and be an all pro, right? A fifth round draft pick that in year 2 is an all pro at that position. So Adam Peters, I think, has a really, really good eye for talent. He's done a really great job with finding value with these later round picks. And I think that's been a very underrated and very kind of dismissed reason why this team is as good as it's been. And you think about it, how much that gives you leverage when you're able to replace at worst bring in depth pieces, but at best all pro level type players with those later round picks. You know, you see a guy like Brock Purdy come in, and now he's the starter on a team that's looking to make a playoff run, and he has a really great relationship with Kyle Shanahan.
Mhm.
So I find it hard to believe that John Lynch is going to be the GM of this team, you know, for the next, you know, all the way through his contract. He's always kind of in and out. He's a family man. I think that, you know, he has other opportunities, whether it be in media or whatnot, that he's always eyeing. Losing Adam Peters would really make it hard to keep that. You know, you would have to go and find a GM somewhere else if John Lynch were to leave. I personally think that Adam Peters is going to be a GM of the year type candidate wherever he goes or whenever he gets into a GM position. And I think who knows if maybe he just didn't like those two situations, but I'm
Right.
assuming that he's declining this because he has been assured that there's a role for him with the 49ers. And if that's been assured through Kyle Shanahan or by Jed York, I think that's a really, really smart decision by the team.
Yeah, I mean, I've been effusive in my praise for John Lynch. I think he's done a good job, really, with Kyle Shanahan, kind of threading the needle, really moving the ship, riding the ship since 2017. Now, Peters is a very interesting candidate. He's a guy who's been successful throughout his kind of career in the front office. He was with the Patriots from 2003 to 2008 when the Patriots went on. That's when the Patriots began their Tom Brady quarterback run, and got a couple of Super Bowls. Then he went to Denver from 2009 to 2016. That's when Denver had Peyton Manning. Denver made the Super Bowl twice, I believe, in that range, and so he was successful there as well. And now 2017 to 2022, he's or 20 whatever you want to call it, he's with the 49ers. Adam Peters has been successful here as well, and he's a guy who kind of is a Cupertino guy. He's a guy who's been with the 49ers. He's a Bay Area native. Uh, he's a guy who's meant to be in San Francisco, and I do have a feeling that he could be the GM sometime in the near future. We don't know when that may be, but Peters clearly has wanted to be a GM. Here's what I'll say. During the 49ers playoff run in 2021, Adam Peters took two interviews with the New York Giants for the general manager position. The timing isn't the issue. It's not that Adam Peters wants to stay with the 49ers for their playoff run. That's not an issue. It's also that Adam Peters doesn't want to be a GM. That's not the issue. Adam Peters clearly has GM aspirations. He said it before, and it's very clear through his actions that he wants to be a general manager in the NFL. So I'd expect that Adam Peters does become a general manager sometime in the near future, likely now for the 49ers. We'll see what John Lynch's career entails. I don't know if John Lynch will step down or not this year. I don't know if he'll remain in a different role, or even as the GM this year. But what I'll say is, don't be surprised if John Lynch leaves at the end of the year. John Lynch, he's come into the year, especially if the 49ers win the Super Bowl. Let me add that. John Lynch kind of he's been a guy, when you say in and out, he's been a guy who came into this job with one goal, winning that Super Bowl. He's been a guy who's been successful. It's not like John Lynch doesn't have anything else to do. Lynch can be a TV analyst and make 3 times the amount of money. He was offered nearly $15 million, I believe, last year to go to Amazon. And he passed that up because he wanted to win that Super Bowl, given that the 49ers were so close. Had the 49ers won it last year, I think you're seeing Adam Peters as the GM last year itself. We'll see what happens this offseason, but I do think that John Lynch, I don't know whether his future is going to be with the 49ers until 2026. It does seem that he could prefer a lesser role in his day-to-day duties, and that could come with a TV role. We'll see what happens, though, and right now it seems like the future is good for John Lynch. I mean, not for John Lynch, for Adam Peters though.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I want to reiterate just how important Peters has been to this team. I always, I was messing around with, I was talking to um, Jesse the other day. If
Uh-huh.
if we could if we could combine John Lynch's ability to make trades with Adam Lynch's ability to draft, we would have the best GM of all time probably, because they're both very elite at those things. But the ability of an Adam Peters, why I think it's so important, Rohan, and this was something that the the Patriots were able to do as well, is be able to retool through the draft.
Uh-huh.
Always gives you the ability to stay under the cap, always gives you the ability to operate from a position of strength where you don't have to overpay for players. Because look at, we're seeing it in this year, a guy like Jaquaski Tart on other teams, if the level of play that Jaquaski Tart had and his importance to the 49ers, other teams, if they didn't have a guy like Adams Peters, would probably have overpaid for Jaquaski Tart to keep him because of how valuable he was to the team. But because Adam Peters and his ability to draft was able to get a gem in Talanoa Hufanga, they were able to let a guy like Jaquaski Tart walk without having to, add his money to the cap. And Talanoa Hufanga turned into an all-pro in that same season. So that is the kind of leverage and the kind of ability that keeping a guy like Adam Peters on the staff is able to do. And I think it's just invaluable to what has caused this team to be extremely successful. You can pay for the superstars, pay for a Nick Bosa, pay for a Debo, pay for a Kittle, pay for a Trent Williams. But these other positions, unless you're a superstar, you can be replaced. And I think that is because of how well they're able to draft.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think that it's going to be very interesting about how Adam Peters kind of takes 2023, and if he's not the 49ers GM, what happens in 2023. But that's all offseason talk, and the one thing that we do know for certain are the 2022 All Pros. So our last topic of today, 2022 All Pros, because Adam Peters was involved with that, with some of them being homegrown talents. What are your thoughts on the four first team All Pros and the two second team All Pros? For those of you guys that haven't followed along thus far, the 2022 All Pros, the first teamers were Trent Williams at left tackle, and then it was Nick Bosa at the edge, Fred Warner at linebacker, and then Talanoa Hufanga at safety. Second teamers were George Kittle at tight end, and then George Odom as a special teamer.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, obviously the three that have been all pros before. I mean, I think this is Bosa's first team all pro. I think he was like a second team or third team before, but obviously Trent and Warner have been, by the way, wore the jersey for in representation, have been all pros before. So congratulations to them. Nick Bosa, obviously well deserved. Easy, those three you could do kind of blindfolded. Props to Hufanga, man. Like Hufanga being able, like, I think that is such a huge honor for him, because look, there's a lot of great safeties in this league, and to be one of the top, Minka Fitzpatrick, I think, was the other one, right? So to be chosen there, think about like the safeties that the 49ers have had. Jimmy Ward has never been an all-pro. Jaquaski Tart has never been an all-pro. And these are guys who we were extremely excited about as a 49er fan. For Hufanga to come out there and become an all-pro in a class where there's a lot of great safeties there, props to him and why he's been able to earn this. I think that earlier in the season, Rohan, he's played maybe better than he has at this last half of the season. But still, his ability to be a disruptor, his ability to get turnovers, his ability to always be around where the ball is, I think has earned him this spot. And I think it's well-deserved, and he's only going to get better. You know what I mean? I think there's a couple of things that people were wondering, is he going to be able to play at a level? I think everybody saw the talent, but he did have injury issues. He's been able to stay fully healthy this whole season. And then, he does have an issue with coverage, which I think is something he needs to focus on and get better at. But if he's able to figure that part out, Rohan, we're talking about a very, very elite safety that is young and, tied into that could be the safety of the future for the 49ers for a very, very long time. So very, very excited about that. Yeah, and I think we'll go into like people that we thought maybe could have that didn't later.
Yeah, and I think the All Pros. It's interesting. Trent Williams definitely deserves an All Pro, right? It's also nice to see. Non 49er fans might not see it, but the honor for Trent Williams to get All Pro this year was fantastic because there were very good left tackles this year. There were some really, really nice ones. Andrew Thomas, second team, was a very good candidate. I mean, in general, there were good tackles. Tristan Wirfs was a really good guy. I know he got injured for a little bit, but overall, there were some nice ones. I know Lane Johnson, right tackle, for talking about. Just we can go on and on, but Trent Williams deserved All Pro there. Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year, likely. Seems like he's crushed every odds book in that category. He's an All Pro. Some other guys, when we talk about Fred Warner, a lot of people like Dre Greenlaw. I still think Fred Warner is the most valuable guy in that linebacker group, and I don't think it's close with the responsibilities that Warner shares. He's a really good linebacker in general, and I think that he deserves that All Pro as well. Hufanga is interesting. I've been a Hufanga supporter the entire year, especially when I saw him at training camp. Once I saw Talanoa Hufanga and his abilities in training camp, I knew that he was going to have a good 2022 season. It was clear that Hufanga was going to be that safety that was going to start when there was a little bit of a question mark coming into training camp. I think he had a great first 7 weeks of the year. And I still think, despite his coverage bust over the last few weeks, there are some goods. There are some things to take away from it, and that are Hufanga hasn't had a missed tackle in 7 weeks. He's been really good in tackling in open space. That's been a valuable thing after missing a good amount of tackles in the first half. But I do think that his play has diminished over the last few weeks, and I do think that this at the safety position there are some very talented players. I think Justin Simmons likely could have been there. I think you make the argument that either Simmons or Derwin James can get that second All Pro spot. I even think you can make an argument that Hufanga doesn't get second team All Pro, but still, it's a good acknowledgement that the rest of the league feels that Hufanga should be an All Pro, and so congratulations to him on the award because another guy, sixth round pick, a first year starter, getting an All Pro in his first season as a starter. That's really, really good. And so good to Hufanga. And now with the second teamers, I think George Kittle, I think he deserves it, especially with his burst over the second half of the year and his value as a blocker. I think he's behind Kelsey, but I think he deserves that. Odom, nice to see him as well. On the snubs, let's start with Dre Greenlaw, and then let's talk about Christian McCaffrey. What are your thoughts? Did you think either of them would have gotten an All Pro, or how did you think?
So I think Dre Greenlaw is a little bit tough. I think he could be deserving, but it's just who is he jumping over? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of great linebackers. Do you jump him over Fred Warner? I agree with you. I think that Dre Greenlaw had a great season, but he doesn't have that type of season if there isn't Fred Warner that's there taking over a lot of the responsibility that he does as far as both in coverage and in run stopping and in just being the quarterback of that defense. So does he go over there? I forget who was the other linebacker that was all
It
pro
was
with
so first team All Pro was Warner. It was Warner, Matt Milano, and then Roquan Smith. And
yeah.
second team All Pro was Bobby Wagner, C.J. Mosley, and Demario Davis. Those were the.
So
Those
I
were the
mean,
teams.
for that first team, I would agree with. Obviously Matt Milano's the best linebacker on the Buffalo Bills team, which was a top defense all throughout the year as well. And Roquan Smith, the year he had as far as tackling, was just insane this year. So I would find it hard for Dre to get first team. Second team, those guys are good too, and yeah, there is a possibility. I don't know the injuries of those other linebackers on the second team list. So maybe if they were able to stay healthy throughout the whole season, that could have been the deciding factor of whether or not, because Dre Greenlaw did miss a few games with injuries. So maybe that played a role if it was like close. But I think it's just tough. Like I think Dre Greenlaw is going to be tough for him to be an All-Pro being alongside Fred Warner. It's kind of like Jordan and Scottie Pippen, right? Scottie Pippen was a really, really great player, but when you're next to Jordan, nobody's really giving you credit for being as good as you actually are. And I think that's kind of going to be the Dre Greenlaw situation, as long as he's, alongside Fred Warner. Christian McCaffrey is the tough one, man. Obviously, I don't think obviously you look at, Jacobs got first team and his numbers, obviously he had an insane year. It's just the level of impact that Christian McCaffrey has on this team and what they've been able to do since he's been on the team. It's hard for me to see that he didn't make the All-Star team, like the Pro Bowl team, or now he's not on the All-Pro roster either. It's just, I know there's a lot of great running backs, and I think Jacobs had an amazing year. Who was the second team running back?
Josh Jacobs.
I think he was first team, right?
Sorry, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is second team.
Nick Chubb. So, Nick Chubb had a great season as well. Both of those players didn't make the playoffs. Both of those teams didn't make the playoffs, right? And Christian McCaffrey, what he did over the last 10 weeks with the 49ers, I think is just so elite as how this team transformed and go on a 10-game winning streak after that. Obviously, the season isn't 10 games, it's 17 games. So maybe those first 7 weeks with him, what he did and the Panthers caused him not to make it, but it's tough. I think that if he was with the 49ers for a full season, it would be hard not to see him as an All-Pro. So maybe that's next year, right?
Yeah, I think here's how I think about it. For Greenlaw, I think you can make the argument. The only argument you can make is him over Bobby Wagner. I think the other 5 do deserve it. And I don't know about Bobby Wagner necessarily because he's a one-sided linebacker. I think Greenlaw's better than him in coverage, but it's tough again because, like I said, Fred Warner's there. Greenlaw is going to be overlooked by Fred Warner because of how important Fred Warner is. And statistically, Wagner has 13 more tackles. Wagner has like 8 more run stuffs and things like that. So it is hard to make that conversation because of how there are 2 strong linebackers in San Francisco. But I do think Greenlaw should have made it. Second, on Christian McCaffrey, don't think McCaffrey does make it with the way that it is because there's only 2 running backs that make one team, and then the other team. And I think that they got it right with Jacobs being 1 because he was the best rusher in the NFL this year, and Chubb just being as consistent and as efficient and effective as he was. I think he deserves second team. If there was a flex, I said earlier this morning, I think McCaffrey makes it. But because he was with the 49ers, because of how they spread the ball around, and, because he doesn't necessarily get as much volume as the other 2 in the running game, and while the NFL kind of looks at running back as a position where it's purely as a running back where McCaffrey is versatile, that's where I think he got hurt. But Suneil, I really appreciate your time. It was a fun show today. We got to talk about a lot of different things. For those of you guys that joined in the chat, thank you guys so much. You guys made it a fun show as well. Any last thoughts before we head out?
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously tomorrow is a big day for the 49ers. I think there's a lot of excitement and optimism going into tomorrow's game. We get to see Brock Purdy in the playoffs. We get to see, this team, if they could live up to their potential. It's going to be exciting, man. And, hopefully you and me, either sometime this weekend or on Monday, we'll get back on here and talk about what happened tomorrow. But hopefully we're talking big win by the 49ers.
Yeah, I hope so too, because that would be a fun one. We got to cover another game of the 49ers. But guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be live very soon. And guys, stay tuned because just in a few minutes, me and Jack Hammer are going live on the channel. So we'll see you there.